As an immediate priority, I appeal for a ceasefire to take place for at least 3 days, marking the Eid al-Fitr celebrations, to allow civilians trapped in conflict zones to escape and to seek medical treatment, food, and other essential supplies. This must be the first step in providing respite from the fighting and paving the way for a permanent ceasefire.
The ceasefire was supposed to have started this morning. It will be in place for 72 hours. At least that's what the fighters say. The RSF, or Rapid Support Forces. It's the paramilitary group that is fighting the army. And it released a message on social media. It said it would honor the ceasefire. But will it hold? Because the other side has made no such commitment. The other side is the Sudanese army, and it has made no official promise to observe the ceasefire. Sudan's army chief and de facto ruler, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, released this video last night.
Honorable citizens, we mourn all the victims of my country and pray for the recovery of those injured, and pray to God that this occasion of Eid returns in safety and peace. I salute you, my soldiers, as you give your lives for this dear country. Long live Sudan, free and independent.
The Eid ceasefire would be an extension. Earlier on Thursday, a 24-hour pause to fighting was declared, but it was not particularly successful, according to people in Khartoum.
The last few days here in Khartoum have been extremely chaotic. We woke up to what sounded like thunder or fireworks, and it was actually gunshots and artillery fire and shelling and fighter jets flying up above, and it has continued basically non-stop since it began. Even when there was supposed to be a 24-hour ceasefire yesterday, that did not at all take place immediately. There was rapid fire, and I saw a jet circling above, and the sounds of bombs and the shaking, it hasn't stopped.
I'm not optimistic about the ceasefire. We've tried this for a while. We've tried this, I think, 3 or 4 times. There hasn't been a ceasefire. Not one of the parties is honoring these proclaimed ceasefires.
These are the reports coming from the ground. As you can imagine, countries are wary. They're not sure if the new ceasefire will hold. The U.S. is not taking chances. It is deploying its military to evacuate its citizens trapped in the Sudan.
There was a so-called ceasefire last night that didn't hold very long, and so people are still being hurt. What I can tell you is that we have good accountability of all our government personnel there working in and out of the embassy. They are all not still co-located, so the State Department is still, the embassy there is still trying to get them all co-located together for their own safety. They are still sheltering in place where they are. And as you probably saw, the Pentagon did announce that they are moving forward to pre-position some military forces and capabilities nearby, just for contingency purposes in case they would be needed for any kind of evacuation.
What about India? India is taking a non-military approach. The Indian embassy in Sudan has issued advisories. It is asking people to stay where they are to avoid the violence. It is also engaging diplomatically with countries around the Sudan to possibly help with evacuations. New Delhi is in touch with London and Washington. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has spoken to his counterparts in Egypt, Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Look, I think almost all countries and the citizens are having the same difficulty. The airport is non-operational. There is intense fighting going around in various parts of the country and in the city, particularly in Khartoum. And I think various countries are looking at options, how to get their citizens out, how to get their diplomatic personnel out. And we are obviously in close contact with them, whether through the capitals, through their embassies in Khartoum, as well as in New Delhi. The support is not specific, it depends. Some countries have some influence and information. Other countries perhaps could guide us in what measures they are taking. Perhaps we can pool resources. At this point, it's a bit premature, but we are in touch. Certainly, as I mentioned, UAE and Saudi Arabia are on that top of that list.
Reports say the UAE and Saudi Arabia are tacitly supporting the RSF, the paramilitary group fighting the army. That's the RSF. And Egypt is backing the Sudanese army. They share close ties. As for India, it is engaging with all nations that have some influence in the region. This is a developing story. We'll keep you updated. The timing of his visit is extremely important. The US and the Philippines held their biggest war games last month. They also signed a new treaty. What does it say? That the US can use 9 military bases in the Philippines. Earlier, they had access to 5. Now they have access to 9. But the Filipino government did have a warning for Washington. Don't bring weapons that could be used to defend Taiwan. Your soldiers are welcome. Your big guns are not. What explains this warning? In one word, China. Beijing has always objected to the treaty between the US and the Philippines. They say it's a plan to meddle in the Taiwan Strait. It could be, but Manila and Washington have denied it. They say the treaty is not aimed at a third country. A third country, meaning China. So what's all the fuss about? To understand that, let's first look at the Philippines' location. It's about 1,000 kilometers from Taiwan. It's also a key part of the first island chain. Quick side note. The island chain is a US policy aimed at boxing in China to cut them off from the wider ocean. It's the biggest nightmare for military brains in Beijing. So that's why the Philippines is important. Now to the politics. Historically, they have been allies of the US. Manila, they've been allies of the US. In fact, it's a strange relationship. America started off as a colonial power in the Philippines. They bought the country from Spain. They bought it for $20 million. Despite that, relations never soured. A mutual defense treaty was signed in the year 1951. A base sharing agreement was signed in 2014. The same one that was expanded last month from 5 bases to 9. Today, the Philippines is a major non-NATO ally, America's longest treaty partner in Asia. But China came out of syllabus. There are 2 parts to China's relations with the Philippines. One is trade. China is the Philippines' largest trading partner. It has also invested some $3 billion in the country, and Manila needs that money. The second part of the relationship is the territorial fights. China claims most of the South China Sea. They also send PLA warships into disputed waters. Last year, Manila sent around 200 protests to Beijing on the same issue. 200. No luck. The intrusions continued. So how do you describe this relationship? Probably a bad marriage. Manila needs Beijing's trade and money. At the same time, it hates the territorial claims. Which brings us to President Marcos Jr. His foreign policy mission is friends to all. He visited China in January. He will now be visiting the US in May. The idea is to balance both the powers. But that's easier said than done. There is a tug-of-war underway for the Philippines. China wants them to dump the US. The US wants them to come even closer. Last year, Joe Biden announced a $4 billion package for Manila. The promise is to create 100,000 jobs in the country. Ideally, this would be great news for President Marcos Jr. Just play the US and China against each other, get the best of both the worlds. But the problem is his country's location. China's territorial claims will not disappear, whatever he does. Neither will the tensions around Taiwan. So both Beijing and Washington need Manila's support for specific reasons. America to keep a watch on Taiwan. Who knows, maybe even mount a military attack from there or a defense from there. And China to break free from the island chain. So Marcos Jr.'s options are limited. Embracing either country is diplomatic suicide. Only the dangerous middle path remains. Our next story is from the UK. The government made an announcement this week. It is